Hello, and welcome to The Art of Being Selfish. I am Dr. Sims, a licensed psychologist, and on this channel, I discuss ways that you can take care of yourself or be selfish so that you feel nourished and filled enough to take care of others. Now, while we will be discussing topics related to mental health on this channel, this is not a substitute for therapy. So, on today's episode, we are going to be discussing being selfish professionally. I had a couple of viewers and followers to request a discussion about this topic, and so we are going to touch on that today. So what exactly is work-life balance? When I say work-life balance, I basically mean how are you balancing the thing that you do for employment, for income, for work, your job, and sometimes like leadership roles in nonprofit organizations or volunteer organizations, and your life, like the other personal things that you're doing outside of work. How do you balance those two things? And I use that as just a general framework because everybody's work situation looks different, everybody's work structure is different. And so the way that you are able to balance your work and your life really does depend on the amount of flexibility that you have, the amount of responsibility that you have. And so take what I'm saying and apply it to your situation in the best way that you can. The question of work-life balance often comes up when we maybe fall victim to allowing our work to consume our lives in general. And we typically notice it because our personal lives, our lives outside of work, tends to be compromised and put on the back burner, and it starts to diminish the quality of life outside of work. Now, as adults, and sometimes as teenagers, we spend majority of our time working, but we definitely spend majority of our adult life working. And so you want to make sure that you have a good balance of that. And it doesn't have to be an equal balance, but you definitely want to have a good balance of that so that your work is not entirely all consuming. And of course, we want our work to be enjoyable and fulfilling and all of that, and I hope that it is. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Hopefully you're doing what you enjoy, and even if you are, you still want to make sure that your personal life outside of work is also just as enjoyable and fulfilling. So I think one of the most important aspects of having work-life balance is determining what your mentality is around work. So are you operating from a lack mentality where you think that if you don't work really hard, if you don't work overtime and over and above and beyond, you're going to be lacking in something? Typically it's lacking in money, and so that plays into like this lack of belief that you're going to be able to survive or you're going to be able to take care of yourself. Or do you operate from a mentality that you have to work twice as hard just to get half the credit? I know that a lot of Black people, a lot of people of color in general, are taught that in order for us to make it and be successful and even be acknowledged for the things that we do, that we have to work twice as hard as our white counterparts. And so is that the mentality that you're working from? Or do you fear not being in control so much that you feel like you have to do your job and everyone else's job so that either you can stay in control or the job is done exactly how you want it to be done? Or maybe you operate from an insecure or self-conscious mentality where you're doing all this work, you're working hard, you're trying to prove yourself, you're trying to show everyone that you're great and you're amazing, and so you do all of these extra things at work in order to prove and show other people that you're really doing a good job, or so that you won't be viewed as being lazy or being a slacker. It could also be that you're fearful of perpetuating certain stereotypes. And so I would encourage you to really do a little bit of self-reflection and think about what is the mentality that is driving you to work so hard and work so much to the point that it is stressing you out and diminishing your quality of life outside of work. Now, I'm not saying that some of these aren't valid and that they aren't like appropriate ways to be thinking about work. Like, of course, you want to be a good worker, you want to be valued, you want to be considered and a contributing part of the team. You want to be acknowledged and celebrated. Like, of course, you want to be doing things that will get you in the door, will get you the promotion, will get you the salaries, will get you the raises. Absolutely. However, we often go above and beyond in thinking that we need to do more when what we're actually doing is okay. We live in a culture where we're taught that the ideal way to live, the best optimal way to live, is to get more, is to do more, is to make more, and to always be striving and to always be getting and trying to be the best of the best and trying to get everything. And again, that may not necessarily be harmful, but I also just encourage people to question, like, is that really what's happening for you? Are there other ways that you can reach success and be able to provide for yourself and live the lifestyle that you want to without overextending yourself? I'm not saying that you have to cut back and stop working and be lazy or any of that, but I wonder if you actually looked at the amount of work that you were doing. If there were even areas that you could cut back on, would you still be thriving and doing an amazing job at work without having to do all of the extra? In order to truly have work-life balance, you have to change your perspective. You have to change your way of thinking about what you're doing. We live in a society where busyness is the goal. You want to be able to look like you're doing a million things and juggling a million things and doing it gracefully, and that's like the definition of black girl magic. And I would just question that. If you're super stressed out and you're doing all of these things, is that really worth it? You can also have good work-life balance. You can be thriving at work and doing an amazing job and having a great life outside of that and not feel stressed and overwhelmed. And that's actually the really impressive part. Being able to take care of your health and take care of yourself so that you can be there for the people that need you is actually what's most important. And being impressive to other people, is that really the goal that you're aiming for? Or is the goal for you to live a fulfilling life and be able to do the things that you desire and not necessarily what the noise around you is saying that you should be doing? Don't allow yourself to be consumed by busyness. Don't allow yourself to be consumed by the idea that if you're not busy, you're not doing enough. Even God rested. So once you've done your reflection on your mentality, answered those questions honestly, and figure out what's driving you, I really want you to start thinking about what your priorities and values are in life. For a lot of people, they value their significant other, they value their family, they value their friends, their children, their community, their churches, their other organizations that they're a part of. Like, there are lots of things that people value outside of work, and once you make an inventory of what those things are, you can start thinking about how to make changes in your behavior so that you prioritize those things in your personal life. And that is where the fun part comes in. So let's talk about starting to change our behaviors at work. Now, warning, do not go to work on Monday and do a complete 180 on people. I would really encourage you to, over time, start making small changes and allow yourself to adjust instead of just flipping the script and acting completely different. Allow people to grow and adapt to the new and improved you. Also, keep in mind that when you start to change, your environment typically doesn't change, or it doesn't change as quickly as you do. They didn't ask for you to decide to have a work-life balance. They didn't ask for you to start to grow and make these changes. And so their reactions to you may not necessarily be as welcoming as you would like for it to. Again, which is why I'm not encouraging you to go and just flip the script automatically. Just start thinking about these small ways that you can start making these changes, and over time you'll notice a shift in the way that you interact with people at work and the way that they interact with you. So first, I posted about this earlier this week of just taking an inventory of what your job description is and what the jobs are that you are doing. Again, sometimes it's fine to take on other responsibilities and roles and things of that nature. But if you are consistently doing work that's outside of your job description and outside of why you were hired and outside of what you're being paid for, you might want to reevaluate the things that you're doing at work, especially if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. I did an episode about this a while back around being able to say no, and there are ways that you can say no without actually saying no. Just saying, like, I have a deadline that I'm bumping up against for another project that I'm working on. I can't take on anything else right now. Or not volunteering when the email goes out for someone who can do X, Y, and Z. Just allowing yourself to really invest in what you're doing and what you're supposed to be doing, and not necessarily adding on a bunch of extra responsibilities. Now, again, this is situation specific, because if you're coming up for a promotion and there are certain tasks and things that you need to be doing to make yourself look better or look more like a good fit for the position, then yes, absolutely do those things. But if you've been doing this for like 4 or 5 years in a row, there's no promotion coming up, there's no room to grow or anything like that, either you need to leave or you need to reevaluate the work that you are doing in that company. Temporary extraness makes sense. For people who are entrepreneurs or who are not necessarily in an office environment, maybe you are the only person doing the jobs at your job, and I understand that, and I know that sometimes, especially when you're first starting a business, you may not necessarily have the money to expand your business, but I would really encourage you to think about how you can be creative. Like, are there any other ways that someone else can take the responsibilities off of you? Are there any other tasks that you can delegate so that you are not the only person doing everything? Again, I recognize that this may happen over time, but really be thinking about how you want to grow your business and how you can allow other people to support you in that. Like, is there anyone else that can do some of those jobs for you? Is there any wiggle room in the budget that you can bring someone else in? Do you have to work 16 hours a day to meet your goals, every day to meet your goals and get the things that you want? You probably don't. But if you feel like you do and you feel like you're working in this way, I would really encourage you to go back to the first point about changing your mentality and see what is really driving you. See if there's a way that you can change that mentality so that you can allow yourself the free time to have a life outside of the work that you're doing. Like, if you're working overtime, taking on extra gigs, taking on extra contracts, doing a bit more work because you have a vacation coming up or you have this credit card bill that you're trying to pay down or anything like that, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with temporary exertion so that you can meet a short-term goal. Most of the time when people are working at that extreme rate, there's no end in sight. There's not a point that they get to where they decide, oh, okay, I'm not going to work this hard anymore. They just keep going and going and going and going, and it drains them of their energy and it impacts their health significantly. At some point, you have to decide that I can still get to the place that I want to be. I can still be successful and not damage my health trying to get there. Another thing that can help in work-life balance is setting appropriate work boundaries. I believe there needs to be a clear distinction between your work and your personal life, especially if your work is draining or you don't enjoy it or you work in a toxic environment that you would prefer not to be in. Being able to shut down and disconnect from that space so that you can be fully present in your life is really important. And even if it is a job that you love and that you're passionate about and that you really enjoy, your work is not the totality of your life. Your work is what gets you an income. Whether you enjoy it or not, the primary goal of your job is to get an income. If it wasn't, you would just be doing a hobby. And so make sure that you're thinking about how you can keep those two things separate as much as possible. So some of the things that I like to think about is turning off your notifications for your work emails if your work emails can come to your phone. Not responding to text messages or emails outside of your work time. So if you're working from 8 to 5, you check your emails at 7:59 and you stop checking them at 4:59. Only in the case of an emergency would you need to respond to those things, and I would hope that somebody's not emailing you for an emergency. Some people don't allow their coworkers, their boss, anybody to text them at all, which is amazing. And I think that being able to make yourself unavailable when you leave work as much as you can is really important. Unless it's an emergency situation, do they really need to talk to you before you're able to be at work again? As much as possible, try to leave your work at work. So I work in a 9 to 5 kind of environment, and I literally shut down my work mind after I leave work. So at 5 o'clock, I'm done. I don't check my work emails. I don't I don't want to talk about work. I just want to talk about something completely different. And so being able to separate those things are really important for me. And I know that some of you all are at different levels of responsibilities within your job. And so unless it is your responsibility to be responsible for someone else, I would really encourage you to think about how you can shut it down. Now, on the other side of that, there are a lot of you who either can telework or can work from home. And I would really encourage you to figure out how you can have a workspace at home so that your workspace does not overflow into your personal space. So absolutely no doing work in your bedroom on a regular basis. Absolutely no doing work in your bed. Like, whatever your safe spaces are in your house, do not mingle them with your workspace. Have a designated spot, even if it's just like in the corner of a room where you sit and you do work, and then when you leave that space, it's just like if you're leaving work, you can leave it alone. If you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur and a lot of your work is done at home, again, just find a space that like, this is my workspace, so that you can have that separation. Your whole house probably shouldn't be your workplace because it's really difficult for you to separate those two things. Again, we're talking about not allowing your work to be all consuming. Take an inventory of all the things that you're doing outside of work. What are the responsibilities and the commitments that you're making to organizations, to people, to church, to your community, all those things that fill in the life part? Do an evaluation of that as well, because sometimes our work is so stressful because we're doing so many things outside of work. So there was one point in my life where I was literally working 5 days a week, had something to do every single night, and something to do all day on Saturdays and Sundays. And so I never had a downtime to like relax or break. And while I enjoyed all those things, which is why it took so long, it was so hard for me to let go of, I enjoy doing all those things. I love being around people. I love my friends. I love my family. I love my service organizations. I love my church. Like, there's so many things that I really enjoy doing, but it was also stressing me out to no end because I just didn't have time to like re-energize and sit down and be by myself for a little while. And so I really had to be intentional about changing that and not allowing my extracurricular activities, not allowing my life to overwhelm my ability to be productive at work either. There has to be a balance. And if you let my mom tell it, I'm literally the busiest person in the world. If you let my husband tell it, I'm literally the busiest person in the world. I'm not. But I really had to sit down and take an inventory of what mattered the most to me and how do I start to prioritize those things. So what mattered the most to me was my alone time, spending my quiet time with God, spending my time with my husband, and building our family and building our household. And so I started to do the things that would allow me to be in those spaces. And so that meant that maybe I can't go to every baby shower that I'm invited to. Maybe I can't go to every party, because in order for me to sit down and have alone time with myself, God, and my husband, I can't be out socializing with people. And you just have to determine, like, what is it for you? What are the things that you need to rearrange so you can be focusing on the things that matter the most to you? A lot of people, a lot of us also have like side hustles, part-time jobs, second careers, and things like that. And again, just focus on whether or not you doing those things is adding to or taking away from your ability to have some kind of balance in your life. There was one point where I was doing like a part-time job and I just wanted to make so much money that I was like, I'm just gonna put myself available all the time, and I'm just gonna be available all the time. And then I got called into work all the time, and it started to stress me out, and it started to take over my life. And so I realized what that driving force was, that fear of lack, that fear of not having abundance. And so I was trying to do everything in my power to make sure that I was able to make a little extra money on the side. And then I realized that at the end of the day, God is taking care of all of my needs. And yes, extra money is amazing, but my sanity is more important to me. And so when you're thinking about those side hustles or those part-time jobs or anything like that, really be intentional about why you're doing it, why you're making the time commitment, and what you're sacrificing around doing those things. If you're able to pull back some, if you're able to say, okay, this is my one designated day to doing this. No, I'm not going to make as much money as I could, but in the long run, is it going to be worth the sacrifice that I'm making? Is it going to be worth me making more money if I didn't get to spend time with the people that I love or the people that I care about the most. One more thing. If you have it, make use of your vacation time and your sick leave. Take a mental health day. Take a day where you just take off from work, from everything, and shut down for a little while. Do whatever you need to do during that day. But take a mental health day. Take a vacation. If you're an entrepreneur and you don't have the vacation days, still plan around your business so that you can take some time off. Again, everybody needs a step away from their work from time to time. No matter how much you love it, like, it's great if you love your job. I want you to love your job. I want you to enjoy your work. And I want you to be able to step away from it to do something different every once in a while. Also, do things that make your life a little more convenient, like meal prepping. Making sure that you have some meals prepared for at least a couple of days out of the week, so that when you come home from work or when you get finished with work, you're not having to worry about going to the grocery store and cooking. So anything that can make your life a little more convenient, try doing those things. Be sure to incorporate things in your life that make you happy. Incorporate the things in your life that you enjoy, not the things in your life that you feel obligated to, not the things in your life that feel like more of a chore or more of a task. Make sure that you're balancing that with things that you really do enjoy. If you love being around people, be around people a little bit more. If you love going to the park, make sure you incorporate going to the park a little bit more. Whatever that is, make sure you're doing the things in your life that you genuinely enjoy and that genuinely make you happy on a regular basis. Far too often, we're stressing and worrying and overworking for a job that would replace us if we were to be injured or sick too long or take too long to come back or not come back at all. You would be replaced. And so does it really make a lot of sense to be doing all of those things, overcommitting, overstressing, overworking for a job that does not necessarily value you in the way that you should be valuing yourself? And if you work for yourself, how would you want to treat your employees, and how would you want to be treated as an employee, and treat yourself that way? Do the things for yourself that you would want to do for other people, or that you would want other people to do for you. We have to get over the mentality that the only way to success is through blood, sweat, and tears. Your health and your happiness are way more important than any stressful job that you could have. So that's it. Having a work-life balance, being self-ish professionally, trying to figure out ways that you can balance your life if you're working in a job that is overwhelming or stressful, or that you're not feeling like you're being taken care of, or you're working for yourself and you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed out. Be sure that you're finding ways to balance your work and your life so that you feel nourished and taken care of on a regular basis. So I have a very special episode coming up next week in honor of Father's Day. So make sure that you all come on back next Selfish Saturday to see what we have going on.